Good afternoon, my friends, and welcome back once again to Carpo's Corner. I suppose I should introduce myself. I'm Carpo, or Joshua. Just as cheesy every time. Authentic living is what this video is about. And the reason I guess I'm laughing and pausing here is because when I started this video, I realized it was going to be a difficult thing to talk about because there's so much of a preamble I would have to make, in order to get caught up to speed on where I'm coming from on a lot of these things. But any of you who follow my channel or have watched my videos already know where I'm coming from. So I'll just make the assumption that most of you know that I am a seeker of truth. I try to be as authentic as I can, as kind as I can. I'm not a money-oriented person beyond my needs. I don't seek approval in the same way that people may assume. In other words, having a YouTube channel, it puts off this illusion to anybody who has, who sees a YouTube channel thinks, well, this person's trying to get seen or get views or get attention. And in some way that's true, because obviously I'm here and I'm talking. And it's because if I'm not doing it for financial reasons, would it be nice to make a living off of YouTube? Sure. I could have a channel talking about science or something specific that maybe isn't even that interesting to me, but that, makes a living. But in this case, I'm talking about my life. This last 13 years on YouTube and all the videos I've made have been really an introduction to who I am through my life and a continuation of the discoveries that I've made. And I'm able to look back on how I felt at any one given time or any particular moment or day in history. I can go back and say, oh, that's what I was up to at that time, and that was my mentality. And all through this, I have just been fascinated with everything that I've come across. I mean, I guess to go back to my teen years, I, had these old books about like chemistry and archaeology, the All About book series, and I was just fascinated with science and technology. I always was. And then music, when I got into music. And then, as I got older, I basically immersed myself in everything that I could find. And this was pre-internet days, so, whatever magazine you had is what you could figure out or know. Whatever books you could get is what you could learn about history. And then the internet came out, and let's just say through the late 90s, early 2000s, I went through so many different phases of discovery and trying to figure out what life was all about. What is this? How much of this is truth? How many of are these things that I hadn't heard about that are true? Of course, back in the 90s, I read a book called Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, and he was like the Alex Jones of the time. They were actually buddies, but it was everything from UFOs to government conspiracies and cover-ups, and at least half the book was true. A lot of the tests they'd done on our own population, the, false flag operations we'd used to go to war, and it really put a sour taste in my mouth about world politics, or rather history in general, trying to understand. Whereas somebody might read War and Peace and want to understand how armies form and Trojans and understand, be fascinated with, different battle tactics, I chose a different route, and I went into the occult and spiritual teachings of all these different cultures. Because to me, what's more interesting is what people have found that works rather than what doesn't work. And all of this, I apologize for the long kind of intro, but it leads me to the current day, say, 25 years later, the internet's alive and well, a whole generation of people who have had full access, and basically everybody's an expert at everything. But we forgot what's important. This yearning for a deeper truth. And I believe this is what so many, especially guys that I've met, I know that plenty of women are seekers, saints and members of various lodges and occult teachers and seeking and spiritual teachings. But I found that it seems to be something that drives men more. And that's because women, at least the women I've met, tend to already live in that light of truth. Not all women. There are some crazy women I've met in my life, of course, like crazy guys. But I'm saying, like my wife, for example, she doesn't need to follow a specific spiritual teaching or read a bunch of books on spirituality. She goes to work, she feeds her kids, she lives the life of a human being that serves for her family. And that is the basic premise of being a human in this world. I know this has kind of changed. There's a whole movement of people who are antinatalists who believe that humans shouldn't even reproduce. This has put a whole different spin on things. But let's just say when we get right back down to basics, our purpose here is, to grow, but we also have to reproduce in some way. Somebody has to. We don't want a bunch of test tube babies in the future. And maybe some people, a lot of people, believe that humans aren't even worthy of being here. And this is because of that exact reason I'm talking about, which is that we've lost the plot. We've lost the search for true meaning. So you're asking, what is that? Who are you to tell me what the real meaning is and what we should be searching for? I can't. That comes from within your own heart, deep down inside. It's that feeling you've had since you were young, that something just isn't quite right, that there's something else you should be looking for. And no matter what religion you may have found or new discoveries about yourself or history or meditation practice, there's always something else in the back of your mind, right? It's just nagging at you, like, look over here. What's this all about? It's not a bad thing. It's a constant searching for understanding and better understanding. And this is where it gets difficult. I actually had a comment earlier on one of my videos. Somebody asked, how do you find meaning or purpose in life? I don't recall what the post was about, but they were saying that actually the question was originally asking, why do I work? Which I thought was a weird question. They said they'd always been taken care of and had money, and well, why do I work? And I said, well, I have a mortgage and kids and a wife and a life. I have to pay for it. But beyond that, it's a good question. I understood where it was coming from. I work because it's the only way I know how to make money right now. But even if I was taken care of and had the money I needed, I would still work. You see, I build guitars, benches, furniture, if I can, anything that I can get my hands on, I'll create something. And as many of you know, I've got a whole stack of tie-dyes. I've got like 100 different bracelets and necklaces. I've got like 9 guitars in various phases of completion, and I haven't sold any of them because I'm a bad salesman. I love making stuff and I love creating. But that's the thing, the creation part, that's what I believe the greatest purpose that we can have here. And I'm not just talking about art. I'm talking about creating something. So we might have everything taken care of financially, but there's always going to be something that's bugging us. What is that? It's wanting to make an impact in this world. Some people, it goes to their head to the point where they believe they have to make, have people making statues of themselves or, giant dedications and parades in their honor. This is the extreme end of the arrogance factor. But there's a huge difference between arrogance and confidence. And unfortunately, those of us who are developing confidence in our own truth are often thrown under the same bus as those who are arrogant. So there is a pain that comes along with self-discovery and intelligence. And I don't mean intelligence in the way of superior intelligence or being smarter at any one specific thing. I believe there are 9, 10, probably more different forms of intelligence: spatial intelligence, mathematical intelligence, emotional intelligence. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses in those, realms. But if you can master all of them, or at least to a degree, at least kind of think of it like a video game where you've got your dexterity, your stamina, your power level, your shield, all these different things. And anytime you have a really high in one, you're going to lose out on another one. That's just how life works. You can't have it all, okay? But I think that building a very balanced view of intelligence, meaning learning a lot about the world, the things that matter to you, the important things, but not drowning yourself with a bunch of political garbage you don't need to know. And I know people will say, well, you can know it all, you can learn everything. No, you can't. You can only really hold so many thoughts in your mind at a time, and I'd rather be thinking about something positive. So I know some people are driving down the street thinking of the president or a war, where I'd rather focus, at least if there's nothing I can do about it, I sit there and focus on, the trees while I'm driving and think about being a happy spirit in this world, which sounds crazy, but it works. It does work. It puts you into a calm demeanor. When you are able to cultivate a calm demeanor, which takes time. I mean, I thought that I was pretty cool, calm, and collected even, say, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But if somebody said certain things, it would bother me. So I worked on that. I honed that skill. I ironed that out because I don't have time for worrying about what other people think or how they feel. If I don't agree with them, I don't agree with them. But the side effect of that self-awareness can be a loss of friends, a loss of respect, a loss of loved ones. People don't want to be near you, especially if you take it too far. For example, in the last year, I've had some extremely impactful spiritual breakthroughs and experiences. What somebody might call satori or downloads. Just, wow. And the kind of shit that I want to run to the camera and tell everybody about, right? But I've learned better. I know better. Even a year ago when it happened, I thought, I'm going to wait on this and I'm going to write about it and I'm going to digest it because I understand. I've been fascinated with alchemy, not metals necessarily. I've done spirogyra and, making tinctures and stuff, but the deeper meaning of it, finding the true self, what, Jung would call well, I guess Nietzsche would call it the Übermensch, and Jung would call it individuation. The individuation process is just finding who you truly are. This requires surfing the subconscious. This requires shutting down your frontal cortex, surfing your subconscious, and finding things about yourself you might not want to know. I have been slowly cultivating this over my lifetime. Therefore, the last few things I really had to deal with, they're ongoing things. So they're not fears or past traumas that I need to deal with. They're current everyday responsibilities, such as being more motivated to do the things I need to get done. For example, we're trying to sell our house so we can get into our dream home, and trying to get approved for a loan, and I can see the roof right now needs to be done, all these things. But you also have to make time for yourself. So running around all the time, being a go-getter, isn't going to make a lot of people happy. So if you're constantly immersed in doing things, always in activity, it's not always going to make a person happy. Even in the long run, you make more money, you get the things you want, but eventually, doing it for the short time is good. Hi, Lucy. Lucy wants to say hi. But doing it long term, that's not necessarily going to make a person happy. You can't just, I guess you could, but I don't think most people want to work their whole life. It seems there's this dream to retire and eventually stop. But the truth is, we should all want to moderately work our whole lives. We always want to be doing things. I want to be whittling away in my shop until I'm like 80. Because I want to make things that matter, I want to make things that I care about just to add a little bit of value to this world, for what it's worth. And in the meantime, caring about these buggers that I have, my dog, my family. Family first, of course, but the dog is family. And what I'm saying here is, a lot of younger folks that I've heard talk about these things will say, you got to abandon if you're trying to find authenticity and you're trying to find your truth, you have to just abandon all this worldly stuff. Don't worry about relationships. Nobody will understand you. You're going to be lonely. I think that's bullshit. I think that if that's the approach you take to individuation, it's okay for a while if you need to go isolate. But the ultimate goal should be integrity, which within its definition means integration. We integrate into the world. This is why I think it's great that there's these sects of Buddhist monks that go up and spend their lives up in meditation. But I think it's much better the ones that go up and meditate for a period of years, then come back down and share that knowledge with the people. Because otherwise, you're just selfishly, trying to advance yourself. What's the point in the planet at all? This gets into some really weird existential shit, some deep philosophies about dualism and the universe. Depending on how you see the universe, to me, everything has an opposite. There are no coincidences. Every action has a reaction, synchronicity, determination. Everything is correct. Magic. Every different belief system, religions, we manifest kind of our own reality, but not to the extent where you can just poof, create a car that you need or something. That'd be great, but it doesn't seem to be conducive with the way the world works. But let's just say that our collective belief systems influence the world in a huge way. And once we move past that and realize that our thoughts do have power, then we can start to align our thoughts better with what we want in the world, in the universe, in the sense that, hey, wouldn't you rather have positive thoughts if there's a possibility that it could bring you good things? And I'm not talking about The Secret, that book that just really, I feel like that whole thing, the whole Deepak Chopra, the whole movement with all the Oprah guests, where everybody's just like, hey, if you want to manifest wealth in your life, this is how you do it. No. They do that because people want money. But they do that because they know people think they want money. It's not the money you want. You just want to be well off enough to be able to explore yourself and the world. But it's about being complete. And that's a very difficult thing. It's not something you can attain overnight. It's something you have to work towards. It's like a muscle. You don't go to the gym one day and come home buff. So you're not going to go to some yoga retreat and come out of it feeling like $1 million. Even though I've had some wild breakthroughs, I fall back to baseline. It's like, okay, I can get back up out of this. It's just how it goes. So those are just some thoughts on, I guess, destiny, purpose, goals. Don't fight it, but you can't force it. You can't just say, this is my purpose, this is my goal. It's not something you just know. It's something you look for. And you might never find it. But then you might find in the end, that's exactly what it was. You did it. You were helping an old man that needed something. Or maybe you did something very mundane, like making, aircraft parts or chain link fences or something. And you think, what a waste of a life. But you know what? That chain link fence stopped a dog from attacking somebody once. Or those aircraft parts, as long as it's not Boeing, will keep people from crashing into the ground. So let's just say that it's important we recognize everybody's goal. Now, I won't deny that if you're just an administrator in some long chain of government bureaucracy, you might think that your job is pointless, and it might very well be, because I've heard a lot of office jobs, people admit that they only work maybe an hour or so a day, and the rest is just kind of piddling around. And that's something I can't understand. I just got home from work a half hour ago, and it was like, 8 hours on the job, 2 hours in traffic combined, and just busting my ass running back and forth all day. And I can't imagine getting paid like 10 times that to just do nothing. But here's the thing. Would I be happier if I made more money and did less work? According to the people who have those jobs, a lot of them are miserable. So it's important to remember that. I don't recall who said it, but he said, I wish everybody could get a taste of wealth and be rich for a while so they could realize it doesn't make them happy. And I understand that feeling, like when I was younger, I remember we had like 10 grand one time. We thought that was so much money. Then we ended up having to use most of it for a funeral anyway. It didn't matter. Every time you have some money, use it, because that's what it is. It's cash flow, currency. It moves. So don't worry about the money. Just find purpose and passion. And if it doesn't work, move on to something else. And those are my thoughts for the day. So thank you for listening. Thank you to my patrons. And thank you for those who, if you want to do a one-time contribution, I have this thing called Buy Me a Coffee. And a few people bought me a coffee, so thank you on that. And thank you to my new patrons. And yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. I've got a lot to talk about. I'm really hoping to have some guests on this year. There's a few of you that I'd like to talk to. So if you're a person who might want to have, a live chat and wants to discuss some of these deeper things, hit me up. I'm open. So peace and love. See you next time.